Let's continue the history about Brahma Chaitanya and his guru. Uh, we were telling story in Vedic Heritage 9 audiobook. Let's repeat some paragraphs and continue from there on. The old disciple returned to the master and reported. He said there was no room, yet the cave to his right was vacant and the one to his left was vacant. Guruji remained silent, but the other disciples were astounded at the insulting attitude of the young disciple. He surely must be punished severely for this. Thursday came and Brahma Chaitanya came to pay obeisance to his guru. All of the other disciples waited to see what punishment he would receive, but the master remained silent. At last, they could no longer take the suspense. The older disciple said, Master, what is the correct punishment for a disciple who is rude to the master? Guruji looked at all the disciples, knowing full well the mood they shared toward Brahma Chaitanya. He said, Your question is not clear to me. Please elaborate. The disciple could see no way out, so he said, You sent me to ask Brahma Chaitanya to prepare a room for you, but he said there was no room, yet the caves to his right and left were vacant. When I pointed this out to him, he just said to tell you there was no room. This insulting attitude toward you has hurt us all, and we would like you to tell us how we are to behave toward this impertinent person. The master turned to the young brahmachari and said, What have you to say about this? Master, he said, you alone are fit to guide my fellow disciples and how they should behave toward me. As for what I said that day, it is a private matter between you and me. Please explain it to them, urged the master. The young brahmachari's face burned with embarrassment. Please, master, he said, it is just between you and me. Then explain it to me, please. If they are here, it won't matter to us. Guruji, he began, looking at the floor, deeply embarrassed. Even I know the proper place for the master is not a place of mud. The only place for the master is in the heart of the disciple. From the first day I saw you, my heart has been completely filled by you. There is no room left. If I had been told to reserve some room that first day, even then it would have been impossible. There is no vacant place in me whatsoever. It is all filled with love for you. As for the caves beside me, you already know of their emptiness. If you had wanted to stay in one of them, you could have done so without asking me. Who am I to be asked anyway? After saying this, he lapsed into silence with his face downcast and reddened with embarrassment. It all came as a revelation to the other disciples, however. Now it was their turn to turn their faces downward in shame. The master spoke. It is true that this is a personal matter, but what has just happened is a good thing. Think no more about it. What you have said was by my request. Love, devotion, surrender, and faith are the basis of all inner development. They cannot be taken away from you and shared. When Brahma Chaitanya was about 25 years of age, he he left Uttarkashi in the company of his master. He had completed his studies of the scriptures and was self-realized. The two saints traveled to a small village near Rishikesh called Kashliwan. Guruji and his brahmachari were given a rousing reception by the people of Kashliwan. There was a Brahmin man who lived there who made it a practice of giving a jar of milk to all the holy men who visited his village. Brahma Chaitanya arranged for him to bring a jar of milk every day for his Guruji as long as they stayed in the village. This he did with great devotion. One day the Brahmin's wife complained that there was not enough milk for the children. The Brahmin ignored her complaints and gave a jar to the master. When Brahma Chaitanya warmed the milk and served it to his master, Guruji said, "There is sorrow in the milk today. I shall not drink it. Please return it to the milkman and tell him to stop giving it." About 2 weeks later, the Brahmin's son died unexpectedly. All through the village, the rumor ran that the master was displeased with the milkman, and that is why his son had died. Brahma Chaitanya told this rumor to his master, who said, "When they take his body to the cremation grounds, tell them to send for me before lighting the fire." 3 days later, at the cremation grounds, the people were told of the master's wishes. The body was removed from the funeral pyre and placed on the ground awaiting the master's arrival. He came and asked that the strings securing the shroud be removed. The head of the corpse became visible. Guruji gently nudged the head with his foot and said, "Get up! Can't you see all the sadness you are causing?" With that, the boy opened his eyes and got up. When they reached their hut, Guruji said, "It is best that we leave this place right now before all the dead people start pestering us for life. This miracle is well documented. It means that Swami Krishnanand Saraswati was an avatar." Brahma Chaitanya spent some time by himself. He and his master parted company shortly after his master restored the milkman's son to life. It was now time for the teachings to ripen and for solitary practice. Many things happened in the next few years that impressed Brahma Chaitanya enough to tell them to his own disciples years later. One of these was an event he witnessed. The Ganges was in a flood state. The waters were rising by the minute. Two sadhus were meditating when the flood started. They decided to climb 2 trees to get out of the water, and they continued meditating. The waters rose and the current became swifter. Suddenly, the trees were uprooted. The faces of the sadhus showed no fear or concern. Brahma Chaitanya heard the one says as his tree was washed swiftly downstream. Glory to the Lord of the universe. At last I am on the move. The other sadhu smiled and said, Glory to the Lord of the universe. Wherever you be, remember him and remain steadfast. The two were carried downstream quite some distance, landed safely on the shore, and emerged tranquil and unexcited to continue their meditation. There was a debate in Prague between some fishermen and the custodians of a temple. The temple custodians felt that fishing next to the temple was disrespectful. The fishermen enjoyed fishing in that spot because their catch was always so good. They took their debate to Brahma Chaitanya. He asked them to come back the next day. The next morning, the fishermen cast their nets before going to the meeting. Brahma Chaitanya asked the temple custodians to bring him 5 or 6 small pebbles. These he held in his hand for a minute. Then he gave them back and said, Throw these pebbles into the water where the fishermen have cast their nets. That evening they all returned. Not a single fish had been captured. The custodians were jubilant. The fishermen were confused and did not know why no fish were caught. They simply bowed to Brahma Chaitanya and went away. There was a prosperous merchant from Calcutta who used to go to Rishikesh each winter and distribute blankets among the sannyasis meditating there. He had heard that giving to a holy man caused you to gain 1,000-fold, and this was his investment scheme. He saw Brahma Chaitanya scantily clad, sitting in the snow, meditating. He quietly dropped a blanket around his shoulders and sat down. After a while, Brahma Chaitanya opened his eyes and saw the businessman sitting in front of him. He said, Why have you put this blanket around me? What do you want? Holy One, said the merchant, I am a Marwari trader. I have heard learned men quote the scripture saying, Whoever gives away 1 rupee in charity to a Mahatma gets 1,000 in return. I have donated 1 blanket to you in hopes of receiving 1,000 in return. Brahma Chaitanya took the blanket from his shoulders and gave it to the merchant, saying, Here is the first one. I will see what I can do about the other 999. The merchant was surprised and afraid that he had offended a holy man. He couldn't even apologize, but Brahma Chaitanya put him at ease. He said, If you could possess all the world's wealth, possess all the world's properties, would you be able to use them all? Someday you will have to leave all your possessions behind when you die. By God's grace, you are already a wealthy man, and you have every opportunity to give away at least part of it in charity. Yet you are greedy for still more. How will this benefit you in the long run if all your attention is fixed on greater and greater material gain, when you will have to leave it all behind you eventually? Give to the poor, and don't forget, no true sadhu or mahatma is poor. When he was 36 years old, In 1906, his master formally initiated him into the ascetic order. He was made a Swami at the Kumbh Mela at Prayag. Guruji gave him a kamandalu, drinking cup, and a dand, a staff symbolizing the spinal column, carried by all Dandi Swamis, and gave him the monastic name Swami Brahmananda Saraswati. The monastic name in Sanskrit is chosen by the master to describe the character of the man as much as possible. Swami is a title reserved for high ascetics of the Brahmin caste. In most traditions, Brahmananda means the bliss of the absolute, indicating that our Gurudev reflected in his being the very bliss of God, and Saraswati is the goddess of wisdom, indicating that he was very learned in the Vedas and in the other scriptures. This Vedic ceremony, the making of a Swami, was performed in the presence of a large gathering of brahmacharis, sadhus, and other dandy Swamis. Afterwards, they were given a feast. Gurudev was already much sought after for his advice and his darshan. The spiritual boost a person receives by seeing and being in the company of a holy man. That's what the darshan is. Now that he was a Swami, he was even more popular. He preferred the life of solitude, however. Whenever he visited a city and people got wind of his presence, he was swarmed by people eager for his darshan. His devotee hosts knew of this and tried to keep his visits as quiet as possible. Lodging was usually arranged for him on the top floor, away from the noise of the streets. People would begin showing up for darshan at about 4 in the afternoon, even though it was not scheduled until 8:30 at night. Later the time was changed to 6:30. Gurudev would usually allow people to visit for darshan for about a half hour, then they would be asked to leave. Many times he asked for a list of the names of the people waiting, which he would go over carefully. Many times he would have his host announce, after people had waited hours to see him, that there would be no darshan today and please come back at a later time. Sometimes, after canceling darshan, he would wait a couple of hours and then ask if anyone was left. When he received a positive answer such as 2 or 3 people, he would say, "Please ask them to come up. They are the true devotees, the others are just curious." Then he would have a warm visit and relate many of his experiences to the people. During this time, he usually passed on to them some bit of information they found very useful later in their lives. In 1930, there was another Kumbh Mela at Prayag. They are held every 12 years. Gurudev decided not to visit Prayag because of all the people, so he stayed at the temple of Shiva at Kareshwar, about 12 miles west. It so happened that Gurudev's master was staying at Prayag. A devotee of Gurudev, Mr. Kuberdut Okja, was also staying in Prayag, and he used to visit both masters on a daily basis. He became an unofficial messenger between them. One day, Gurudev's master sent the message, "Will you be visiting Prayag during the Kumbh Mela?" "Not likely," was the reply. Guruji answered, then I will come and see you there." When Gurudev received the message, he said, "Good, good, he will come here to meet me. I didn't know he wanted to see me. Please arrange for a motor car to pick me up here at 4 a.m. so that I can get to him before sunrise tomorrow." The next morning, the two masters found themselves face to face. Gurudev was about to prostrate himself before his master, as is proper, but Guruji took him into his arms and embraced him. He made him sit next to him, and when Gurudev protested, Guruji said, "It is proper, it is proper. We are equals now." Guruji went on to tell him, "You have spent enough of your life in secluded forests and mountains. Now spend more of your time in towns and villages so that the people can benefit from your vast learning. You are unequaled at answering questions and easing the doubts of people." One day, a devotee asked Gurudev, "I have heard that you sit through the night meditating and singing praises to God. Please allow me to witness this. Will you be able to stay awake all night long?" "I will try my best," was the reply. "All right, it won't bother me, but please, not a word about this to anyone else." Word leaked out that a devotee had spent the entire night with the master, and some detractors decided to try to set the master up for a scandal. They hired a prostitute and bribed her to go along with their plan. She was dressed as a man and joined the darshan-seeking throng of people. The plan was that she was to stay after the others left on some pretext and then try to seduce the master. No one knows what happened for sure, but when the time came for her to act, she let out a scream and ran down the stairs. The conspirators were waiting for her downstairs and asked her what happened. She said, "Oh, my body is aching all over. Why did I ever listen to you? He is a holy man. He is saint." Outside the ashram, a sadhu was loudly shouting insults about Gurudev. His devotees tried to pacify the man, but he only became louder. They were about to drive the man away with force when Gurudev stopped them. He called them aside and said to them, "I have given you many lessons on scriptural matters, but I have never given you a lesson on tolerating insults. Today, by God's grace, an occasion has arisen which gives me the chance to do so. Remain calm while this man insults me." "But master," they said, "the laws of Manu state that no one should listen to criticism of the Guru." That is right. The idea behind that is not to think ill of one's guru. But I want you to think about something. Is it harmful to be criticized, or is it beneficial? If you believe in karma, what will be, happiness or sorrow, success or failure. No one of these can be changed by someone's criticism. The scriptural pundits are of the opinion that critics help to wash away the sins of the sages and are therefore an aid to their progress. Some of the bad karma of being paid off by suffering the criticism, and some bad karma is being earned by the one doing the criticizing. In effect, the critic is taking on some of the unpleasant karma of the other person. Devotees offer their devotion and service to the Master, but share with him his spiritual powers and knowledge. Critics offer the service of removing some of the unwanted karma, and they ask nothing in return. We should be very grateful for the beneficial service that they offer and should in no way try to stifle their criticism. The disciples listened to the mock sadhu's insults for well over an hour. Then he sat down under the tree and rested. As he rested, he was served a meal by Gurudev's disciples, and when he was finished and stood up to go, he was given 2 rupees so that he would be able to go by horse and carriage rather than having to walk. He later expressed remorse at his behavior. The next day he came back and yelled some more, only now it was Swamiji, Swami ki jai ho, Swamiji ki jai ho, glory to the Master. Gurudev never accepted donations of money or other valuables. Once, a wealthy merchant told Gurudev about a lawsuit he was involved in. Gurudev listened to the man's complaints without comment. The next day, the man's lawsuit was settled in his favor. He assumed that Gurudev had interceded. He may have, who knows. That evening, he went to Gurudev for darshan, and he took a cup made of leaves which was filled with gold coins and covered with jasmine flowers. He offered the cup to Gurudev and stayed for some time, enjoying the darshan. Later, the brahmachari who took care of the offerings of flowers discovered the coins and brought them to the attention of Gurudev. Gurudev issued orders that if the merchant came back for darshan, he was to be denied admittance and told to wait at the gate. The next day the merchant returned for his darshan, but was told to wait at the gate while all the others were admitted. After waiting for 2.5 hours, he was finally admitted. Gurudev said to him, "You offer me money, but you don't offer it to those poor who ask you for it. To those who need it, you offer nothing. You offer it to me. Do I have a son or daughter I need to marry off? We don't need your money. Take it and go. Give it to those who need it. If you want to give me something, give me your greed, your lusts, your weaknesses. That is what you really treasure about all else." This is what you really treasure above all else. Give me everything that stands between you and God. Gurudev was totally in harmony with nature. Many times, while wandering about in the forests, he would encounter a wild animal such as a tiger or lion. This would always just step aside for him to pass. He spent several months in a particularly beautiful spot in the jungle. There was a nearby spring and a comfortable cave and plenty of sweet potatoes for food. This spot was an ideal place for his meditations. In those days, India was occupied by the British who loved to hunt big game. One particular Englishman made arrangements to use the area Gurudev was in for a lion hunt. He staked a water buffalo securely near the spring and went away. In the middle of the night, the buffalo bellowed in pain. It had injured itself trying to get free. Gurudev went out in the jungle to see what the problem was, and seeing the buffalo all tied up, broke the rope by pounding it between two stones. The next day, the hunter and his wife were very upset to see that their buffalo had been set free. The hunter shouted a lot of obscenities. The villagers tried to quiet him, telling him that there was a great Mahatma who lived nearby that may have released the buffalo. What Mahatma? The Englishman's wife. How dare he spoil our hunt? We are the rulers of this land. It belongs to us. The jungle belongs to us as well as the game. We will do with it what we want. Tell your Mahatma to mind his own business or else. She suddenly doubled over in pain. It seems her lower digestive tract had stopped operating. In a short time, her torso had swollen distressingly. The villagers advised the English man to find their Mahatma and ask him to cure her. After research, Gurudev was found. He said to them, "This is such a large jungle. Why did you have to plan such violence right in front of me? I had to go out last night and free that poor buffalo." The Englishman was very impressed with the sight of Gurudev. He said, "I am sorry I disturbed you. Please help my wife if you can. I promise you I will never return here again with the purpose to hunt." "All right," answered Gurudev. The lady suddenly recovered. One day, Gurudev was staying at a small village near the Rewa jungle. His devotee, Govardhan Shah, traveled to the village to be with him. Together they went off into the jungle. That night Gurudev told Govardhan to wait for him under a tree, and he went off. A man appeared and handed him a small pot, saying, "Keep this, it is for you." When Gurudev returned, Govardhan told him of the strange occurrence. "See what is in the pot," said Gurudev. "It is full of fresh cream," said Govardhan. "Drink it and stop wondering where it came from. In the future, just accept what comes and don't ask so many questions." Such occurrences were common with the master, since the time when he was 9 years old, and he repaid the goddess of the Ganges for the water he had drunk. He never again had to quench his thirst or hunger with water alone, just as she had promised. On one occasion, a man appeared in a remote forest location to serve the Gurudev and his brahmachari a meal. The brahmachari asked the man where the food had come from. It was sent by such and such a person from such and such a village. Some time later, the brahmachari happened to be in that village and looked up the man. He asked if he had sent the food. The answer was no. The impression Gurudev made on people was extraordinary. It is said that if you once looked into his eyes, you could never forget him. Wild animals stepped aside for him, nature saw to his every need, and everyone who came into his presence regarded him with deep respect. We will stop the reading for now, and the next step in Vedic Heritage 11 audiobook will be about the life of Gurudev in relationship with Maharishi.